Hey, Lisa.
Hello. Hi. Hold on, I'm going to turn my heater off. I realize it's probably a little loud.
Oh, sure. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Sorry if you hear
Good.
some in the background. My dogs are like roaming around upstairs, but
You're okay.
you know.
I'm hiding down in my construction basement right now. Maybe that was the most quiet.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, let's cut to it. Uh,
Yeah.
for those of you who don't know, this is Lisa, the Midwest Mama. Half of you follow her, half of you follow me. So quick introduction. We're doing the Doula speed dating event at Bloom this weekend. And one of the reasons I wanted to interview you was so that people could get kind of an idea for what doula work is. Maybe they're interested and they've never, known exactly what it was about. So I'm just going to be asking a series of questions.
Yeah.
But the reason I want to talk with you, I know you're unavailable this Saturday, but you were actually my doula, and so it makes the conversation like a little bit special, I suppose. So this message
Yeah.
is for people out there looking for a doula or looking to understand what a doula
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
If I'm looking off to the side, I have my questions over here. So the first one is, how did you get into doula work?
So my undergrad is in business. I have a master's certificate in life coaching. So I worked in the financial industry and was doing my like life coaching business I launched in 2019. So I was kind of doing that on the side, and um, I left my job at Principal and was staying home and just doing my coaching. And my husband actually was like, "You'd be a really good doula." I was
Oh,
like, "What's that?" And at the time, before I met Dr. Brooke, I used to go to another chiropractor, and his wife actually is who she's a doula trainer, Katie Nyberg, who
mhm.
owns the Iowa Baby Ladies, and I work under her as well in her team. But yeah, so Kenton was like, you'd be a really good doula. So I trained under Katie. I took my first client 2 weeks later, and my business just really took off from there. And
That's awesome.
now,
I really don't
yeah,
think I knew that Kenton was the reason you were a
yeah,
doula. That's great.
yeah. He kind of introduced me to it because
Oh,
a friend at work had his wife had a doula or
that's
something, and it just was.
so
It felt
fun.
like a natural progression
Yeah,
in my mission to help moms. So,
awesome. Okay, the next question, the burning question on everyone's mind. What is a doula?
okay. So, and I'm trying really hard to, I know it's like late and everyone's like ready for bed. And so I'm trying really hard not to over talk. So as a doula, because if you know me, I'm a chatter.
Me too.
Yes. So, a doula, I always preface, like, I did not go to medical school. I serve a very different role than your doctor and the nurses there. I'm not doing any of the medical stuff. But I am there to support the birthing parent and their partner. And I provide support during pregnancy and throughout your birth, or during labor and then the birth. I provide support in 3 ways. So physical support, educational support, and emotional support. So physical support, that's going to look a lot like positions, comfort measures, kind of knowing what things to do to keep you progressing in labor and keep you as comfortable as possible. And I always say too, I'm not there to replace your partner. Those same hormones and those same positions that got that baby in there are the same ones that are going to get that baby out. So anything I can do to meet your partner where they're at and help them feel included in the experience, I'm there to educate them too. Um, Educational support. So that looks like providing evidence-based information on varying things regarding labor and birth so that you as the parent can make an informed decision regarding your care and the care of your baby. As you know, with all those hormones and things going on during pregnancy and birth, and just having someone there to help ride those highs and lows with you during that experience. I think my life coaching background definitely allows me to serve my clients emotionally in a really unique way. So whether that's, during your birthing time, or I always tell parents between our prenatal visits, if you have questions or if you just want someone to talk to who gets it, my phone is always on. So
And I know it is.
Yeah, it's
um,
always on.
Prenatal visits. I didn't include this question when I prepped you with questions, but you
That's
do
okay.
prenatal visits. Tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about what those like, because a lot of people think, oh, I have a doula and
Yeah.
they're going to help me with the birth. That's true, but they don't necessarily know that there's appointments and things like
Yeah.
that leading up to birth to allow you to better
So
help.
and I recently changed things a little bit. So technically I'm doing 2 visits, but sometimes if I have, I'll do 2 prenatals and 1 postpartum. But sometimes if I have parents where I'm like, okay, they really need a little extra help, I'm happy to do that 3rd visit. But so it's 2 to 3. But so my first visit, I like to go through some basic birth education and help you write your birth plan. So I like to do a plan A, B, and C. We're going to talk through every possible scenario of what you want your birth to look like in various situations. So we've got like plan A, plan B, what if, things slow down and they want to try to introduce interventions, things like that. We talk through, if an emergency cesarean happens, what does that look like? Things like that, because I want mom to feel like she's still maintaining her power in her birth experience. And by being educated and having a plan, that's going to allow you to do that. Second prenatal visit, I like to go through positions and comfort measures. And then if we do a 3rd visit, I'll help you start to plan for postpartum as well. So I always tell people, if you knew ahead of time you were going to get the flu, what would you do to make your life as easy as possible? So I'm really just kind of holding space and having that conversation so we can start to make a postpartum plan so that when you get home, you kind of know what that's going to look like for you and your partner, maybe other resources or help that you might hire in or family, things like that. But I've also had clients that, have wanted me to come over and teach their partner how to baby wear or change a diaper or do a bath, things like that. Because I am a labor and a postpartum doula and a mom of 3. So just all the tips and tricks is what I like to do on that 3rd visit.
Absolutely. And like, I loved that you mentioned the if they had the flu thing, because
Yeah.
I know we went through at our house some of the things like, oh, who's going to do this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
My husband was like so supportive. He was like, I'll do this and this and this and this. And I was like, oh, you're going to be burnt out a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
Who else can we
Mm-hmm.
ask? So I like that you put it in that sort of regard so that people know, hey, we got to pick somebody that's not in our couple dynamic
Yeah.
that can help things, right? So I think that's important too.
Yeah. It takes a village and people don't realize, especially if you are a first-time parent, it tends to kind
Mhm.
of hit you like a brick wall. Like, besides, of course, that newborn bliss, but just the amount of time that it takes to care for a newborn and everything else kind of has to fall to the
Mhm.
wayside. So I,
Absolutely.
I like to help prepare for that too.
Preparation. What is it? Plan to fail, or fail to plan means you plan
Plan
to
to
fail.
fail. Yeah.
I almost said it backwards. We don't want that. Okay. The next question was, how is a doula different than a loved one in labor? You maybe touched on it a little bit. We made a post about it today.
I saw it. I
Yeah.
liked it. I read it.
Oh, thank you.
And I've had many a births where, grandma's in there with you or a sister or things like that. Um, if I like to know ahead of time too when we're planning if someone's going to be there so I can make sure they feel like they have a role and they're not just sitting there. So that's really helpful for me. But they, your partner and like your mom or a sister, they're going to fill that emotional need that you have. And there will be moments in labor where you might be scared or kind of, nervous. And it's, again, that emotional roller coaster. They're able to really fulfill that emotional need. But as a doula, I am able to, I've done this a million times. I kind of know what to expect. I know what positions to put you in. I know the things that we need to be doing to keep you comfortable and keep things going. Whereas, friends or family might not know all of those things. The other thing I found too is they all tend to kind of have an opinion on what you should do. So it's like, oh, well, I had an epidural, so you have to get one. That's what you should do. Or, my birth ended up in a cesarean. You're going to have trouble progressing as well. And so sometimes it can be like that negative voice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or it can even be a distraction having family members in the birth space. So yeah, so very different. Sorry, I'm rambling.
No, not really.
But
Listening, and I was thinking, like sometimes you mentioned sometimes it can be those negative voices, and
mhm,
that's the point too, is maybe knowing to tell the loved one in advance, hey, we don't want XYZ. So if you're like talking about it, then it maybe puts the idea in
mhm,
my head,
mhm.
So that's a good point too, just talking about expectations and what the birthing person wants when it comes
Right.
time for.
Because
Yeah.
that can affect too a birthing mother's oxytocin hormones, and
Mm,
if she's stressed out because she's got her mom there or
exactly.
somebody,
Yeah.
sometimes it's like you have trouble setting those boundaries with
Mm-hmm.
your parents when you first become a parent, and so you might not actually even want them there. So sometimes those are conversations that I have to
Yeah,
help
that's
navigate too,
true.
because feeling
Or if,
safe in your birth space is
oh,
important.
I was fine and I had this, so you'll be fine to get,
Hmm.
that's not always the case, but
Hmm. Yeah. And I even, as a birthing person myself, my first birth, I ended up getting an epidural and I didn't want to because I didn't have a doula. It was
mm-hmm.
my best friends and my mom was there. And my mom, I remember driving to the hospital and she was like, you should just get the epidural.
Mm,
And so it's kind of like you said, having that
yeah,
negative voice, because they don't know. It's not what they do
right.
for a living. So, and I've seen, you name it, I've seen it, I've experienced it. So I'm able to
Mm-hmm.
provide a very different insight.
Absolutely. And I think that's helpful too. The
Mhm.
next question we had, what is your favorite thing about what you do?
Okay. I love my job. So I always tell people too, like, I'm fortunate that I don't have to work. My main job is being mom, but I do this because I'm so passionate. Like, I was already back to seeing clients 2 weeks postpartum after my most recent birth. So I would say do as I say, not as I do when it comes to postpartum, because that was way too early. My favorite part about my job is watching new parents meet their baby for the first time.
Yeah.
Like that I tell parents it's the most intimate, vulnerable thing you will ever do in your life is to bring life into the world. And it feels very surreal. I'm sure you can, I don't know why I feel like I'm tearing up. I'm getting emotional talking about this. But
An emotional topic,
it
for
it is. Well,
babies.
I'm recently postpartum still too. So I feel like all the hormones, but, watching someone meet the thing that you
Mhm.
created with love and meeting that little being for the first time and bringing them into the world and just the pure love and joy that you see in their eyes.
Mhm.
That's my favorite part.
That is the best. Just
Yeah.
thinking about it.
Yeah. So,
You're up to, I don't know. So you're not alone. And I'm not as recently postpartum. I got almost 2 years, so I shouldn't be crying.
but it's just it's just special. And
Hmm.
to allow people, when someone allows me to be in that sacred space and to be a
Hmm.
part of that, it's truly an
I
honor.
think that
So,
about, pregnancy and postpartum in general, because, we work with women usually right up until they're due, and then again, postpartum, sometimes almost right away. We get
yeah.
to meet their baby, get to meet their significant others. It's such a fun thing, and it is, again, like you're talking about, so intimate and being around. It's not the same as being at the birth, I'm sure, but it is just such a great way to get to
Mhm.
know family and people,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Well, you're my chiropractor, and like you're kind of up in there, like feeling the baby and doing your adjustments, and so
We're
it's
not
kind of special for you.
baby, that's obstetrics, but we are feeling your ligaments.
Well, yes, no, but I mean, like when you're feeling my ligaments, you can feel my baby kick.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yes,
Sometimes you
yes.
feel
Sorry, no, you're not going anywhere near the vaginal
yes.
region. That's very different.
Or to feel where the baby is. That's not what
No,
we're. Yep.
no.
Important
Yeah.
distinction. Yes. Okay. The next question we had. What is a difficult situation you came across during a birth and how did you handle it?
Okay. So my mind, when you sent this question, my mind really immediately went to like kind of high risk, like challenging birth experiences. Was that sort of your intention with that
Yeah.
question?
Yeah.
Okay. And I've had moms who were high risk who immediately hired me for that reason, because they knew they're high risk. And I've had a lot of high risk moms. Probably one of the scariest and most challenging births I had was preemie birth. So mom was, I think she was like 24, 28 weeks, and she'd noticed a difference in fetal movement. And um, she went in and they were checking her, and basically they were like, we need to take the baby out immediately. And so that's being with someone, and that's where that emotional piece really kicks in, because at that point it's a medical emergency, and it's kind of, this is why I advocate so much for counting your kicks every day and noticing those changes in fetal movement, because she ultimately saved her baby's life. And so like I wasn't even allowed in the operating room because he was so young. And they wanted it just completely quiet and limited staff in the operating room when they took the baby out. But just being there with her and like holding space for the scariest thing, like, is my baby gonna make it? You know, as a mom, I can't even imagine. And when you have those challenging moments too, there's no way to like sugarcoat it or like be like everything's great. Like you kind of when I've coached other doulas too who have gone through challenging experiences with their clients, like you really just have to hold space and kind of meet your client where they're at. But baby ended up getting transferred to a different hospital, and so I stayed with mom until she was discharged and she could be transferred. And there was a weird thing where like the ambulance lost a tire. Oh, it was like 12 hours or something, or 8 hours. Like we were just sitting waiting for her to be transferred. It was just the weirdest thing. But then I made sure that I, stayed with her while dad went with baby to the NICU. And then I, transferred with her over there and made sure that she was comfortable, and then just, continuing to follow up. I think I even brought like a little, I think it was around Easter last year, because I remember I made like a little Easter basket for the baby. I brought some like goodies because and just going in and spending extra time in the NICU with her and just holding that space. And I've definitely had, other scary situations like that where
that's good to know too.
Yeah.
And like knowing that you get to be present with those people, even if you don't get to necessarily like go back into the operating room with them, that you still provide the support that they need, right?
100%.
So that wasn't actually how the question was intended, but I'm really glad that you shared that. So I asked around my office, what questions would you have for a doula?
Oh, okay.
So a few of these came from other people. So what she had said she actually, so it was one of my office staff. She said she had actually talked with you about how sometimes you might have to kind of like butt up against like an opinion or something like that. So navigating speaking with maybe hospital staff that is not listening to a birth plan or something like that.
So that's very good question. Completely different. I have an answer for that. So one, always know that you can fire your nurse. If your birth space is so sacred, if you are not vibing with your nurse, you ask to speak to the charge nurse and you tell them you want another nurse. And I am never going to speak on your behalf as a birthing person or a patient. But it's important to know that the doctor just kind of pops in at the end to catch your baby. The nurses are really there the whole time. So if you're not getting good vibes from them, if they are kind of contradicting what you want to do in your birth plan and it's not medically necessary, then absolutely ask for another nurse. That's part of where that educational support comes in. So again, I'm never going to speak on your behalf, but I'm going to say, okay, Sally, this was part of your birth plan. How are you feeling about this? And we can always ask the medical staff to kind of leave, give us privacy so we can talk through what evidence shows. But a lot of times I notice in hospital settings, and there's a couple hospitals here in the metro that tend to do this more, where they're very quick to like jump to interventions and to do things because that's kind of how they are trained to do it.
Mhm.
And it's not always medically necessary.
And that's
Um,
the point that you mentioned earlier too. We're not saying to fire a nurse for something that's medically necessary or medically relevant. It's if there is something that's medically necessary or relevant, please do that.
yes,
But but you do have options
yes,
and when you are birthing.
yes, 100%. And so, yeah, I rarely have any issues with hospital staff. I'm not a confrontational person. I try to kill people with kindness. And if you know me, that's how I am.
Confrontation.
But yeah,
Oh.
what?
I'm trying to imagine you as confrontational and I actually can't. So no. Okay, so both of those were really good answers, kind of a spin on the question, but I love that you talked about both of them. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Next one was share your favorite birth story.
This was really hard for me. So two came to mind. One was an HVAC, so that's a home birth after cesarean. And so getting to watch, I actually took a picture that this mom had posted, like a side by side of her first birth that ended in a cesarean versus her home birth that she had in the birth pool with her husband, and her husband caught the baby. Um, and it was just absolutely beautiful. I had a recent birth in we're in February. I don't even know what month it is. Tell me you're sleep deprived without telling me you're sleep
Kids and the business and
but it was a birth I had this last month, where her water broke, and the doctor immediately was like, "You need to go to the hospital," and they were going to immediately start Pitocin. And so I was able to come in because she wanted a natural birth, and we had talked about the cascade of interventions, and um, I was able to come in and completely just sort of change the birth environment. And pretty quickly, she was having regular contractions. She was progressing really quickly. I was able to kind of sum it up, I was able to help her achieve that natural vaginal birth that she wanted. And it was like everything that she envisioned for her birth experience.
that's awesome.
So that's super rewarding for me,
Mm-hmm.
where, again, that's one of those scenarios where I'm not going to come in and say, nope, we're not doing this.
Mm-hmm.
But there really wasn't a medical reason. She hadn't been
Mm-hmm.
ruptured for that long. I was like, let's try some natural things first. And it worked. So, yeah.
That's like a happy story.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
The last question we had was, how can people get more of you? If someone wants to work with you, how can they find you? Obviously, they can follow you here on Instagram.
Yes.
Other than that, how can people get a hold of you?
Yes. And I've been super quiet on social media, so people probably don't even know that I'm still working, but you can find me here on social media at the Midwest Mama Official. You can also reach out to me on my website, themidwestmama.net, and you can send an inquiry form to me there if you want to work with me, whether that's for your birth. I do postpartum overnight work. I also do birth planning sessions, and then, of course, mom coaching. So my website, or email me, hello@themidwestmama.net.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending your Wednesday night with me. I really appreciate your time. And yeah, if anybody has questions or is loving what Lisa's saying, go follow her.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Brooke.
Thank you.
Well, you have a good night, and I'm going to see you on Saturday for my adjustment.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Bye.